What's up, folks? I am Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, and we're here once again with some UFC DFS picks and lineup advice, this time for Fight Island UFC Fight Night for FanDuel and DraftKings Wednesday slate. In this video, we're going to use our Occupy model, our free real-time player dashboard at occupyfantasy.com, to take a look at the slate from a high level, use some betting odds, some projected ownership to give you the strategies and advice you need to build profitable lineups, no matter which type of contest you'll be playing on Wednesday. Before we get started, go ahead and click that subscribe button below. That way you're notified of all of our latest videos. We have a PGA video coming out soon, and we have another UFC video coming out later this week, as we do have a Saturday slate as well. Tons of action, both FanDuel and DraftKings, and we're going to put out as many videos as we can to help give you the advice that you need. If you'd like this video, give us a thumbs up. We'd appreciate that. Any comments or questions you have about UFC DFS, this particular slate, go ahead and comment below. And as always, we love to hear your opinion. You guys had some great opinions last time. Give us who you think will be the highest scoring DraftKings player on this UFC slate. Comment below with who you think that'll be. So now, this slate on Wednesday is going to be incredible. If you were disappointed by the Saturday slate, the 13-fight card, 251, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by this card. We have tons of knockout potential. We have a lot of new faces. And despite only being 11 fights, it's going to be extra interesting for DFS purposes because there's going to be a wide range of outcomes. And with the lack of data on a lot of these fighters, the public is going to move into very predictable spots, and we'll have tons of leverage opportunities, especially in our high-risk contests. So let's jump over to the Occupy model. OccupyFantasy.com is where you can get access to our MMA model. Ranks every single fighter on the slate, both FanDuel and DraftKings. And like I said, this slate is going to be very, very fun. There's tons of uncertainty. And the first thing that I noticed when our model was released for this slate is the abnormally high number of fighters with high OF index values. If you're new to Occupy Fantasy or new to UFC DFS, OF index is a proprietary metric in our model that ranks every single fighter on the slate by more than 50 different metrics, and it boils it down to one number. And like I say every UFC video, basically how I look at this number is the likelihood that a fighter will win, combined with the fact that when they win, what is the likelihood that they end up as a top 6 scorer on the slate or end up in the optimal lineup. And on Saturday's slate, we had 13 fights, but we had just 6 fighters with an OF index of 90 or higher. And on this slate, only 11 fights, we have 9 fighters. So lower number of fights, higher number of high upside fighters. And that popped out right away to me when I looked at the first run of the Occupy model. In this slate, we have 11 fighters that either have never fought in the UFC before or only have one UFC fight. So a lack of data for nearly half the slate, which is exciting from a high-risk leverage standpoint. And also on the slate, unlike Saturday, where there weren't a ton of high knockout potential fights, not a ton of high fantasy scoring fights as we saw. We saw Grant in the first fight of the night end up with 100-plus points, then a long streak of fighters without any big fantasy scoring. In fact, it was so low scoring that we saw a title fight stack take down the big tournament on DraftKings, which is very rare, especially on a 13-fight slate. That will not be the case this time around, as we have so much upside at all price points. Usually, when we look at the betting markets, we look at the model, we see fighters at the top of that first round knockout potential, guys who have fighters who have the best chance of getting that all-important round 1 KO. Normally, the leader in that probability will be 35 to 37%, somewhere in that range. On this particular slate, we have 2 fighters approaching 50%. We have another above 40%. So there's going to be fireworks. There are going to be fights where you cannot blink or you will miss a knockout. And that should be exciting, not only from a viewing standpoint, but from a DFS standpoint as well. All right, let's start with the main event. And as always, you can check out the 5-round fights in our model by checking the 5-round checkmark box here, the filter in the model. Calvin Kattar, Dan Ige. And both these guys, unsurprisingly, as we normally see with title fights, 5-round fights, both these guys rank in the top half of the model. which is an indicator that we should want heavy exposure to this fight, regardless if Kattar wins, regardless if IGE wins. IGE especially because of his price on DraftKings. As we talked about last week, FanDuel is doing a great job of pricing up 5-round fighter underdogs. As we see, Dan Ige is $18, one of the most expensive fighters on the slate, whereas on DraftKings, he's one of the least expensive at $7,100. So again, props to FanDuel for making it a little more game theory interesting. But on DraftKings especially, you'll want someone from this fight. A 5-round fighter usually ends up in the optimal lineup more slates than not. And this slate is no different, as both Kattar and Ige rank in the top 10. Our model obviously prefers Kattar a little more as a minus 335 favorite, a 57-cent move in his favor since lines have opened. That's a good thing. And there's actually been a lot of money line movement. I imagine because of the unfamiliarity of a lot of these opponents, the initial opening odds may not have been as sharp as we've seen in slates past. If we sort by money line moves over the last 2 days, we see Jack Shore with a massive 125-cent move. We see Chimaev with an 80-cent move, Kattar 57-cent move, Mihailidis 50-cent move, and then we even have Gordon and Murphy with 20-cent moves. So lots of movement already, and this is something that will continue to update until the slate begins Wednesday night. So be sure to check back frequently to see which fighters are getting boost in the betting markets. All right, let's sort again by OF index. All right, so we talked about the 5-round fight already. Let's talk about some heavy exposure fights. There's really another one that stands out, and if you're just looking at the model, you'll probably see it right away, and that's this Jared Gordon and Chris Fishgold fight. Gordon with a 137-point OF index, Fishgold right behind him at 120. This reminds me of the Ray Borg fight in one of the first slates we posted the Occupy model for maybe 2 months ago, where we have takedown heavy fighters, and whoever wins is going to likely end up in the optimal lineup, especially at their price tags. Gordon 8,300, Fishgold 7,900. This is takedown city, same as that Ray Borg matchup of a couple months ago that led the model. Expect tons of takedowns for whoever wins, Fishgold or Gordon. Now, slight edge goes to Gordon because of the money line favorite, the money line move. But you see here, like, pretty significant, and this KO percentage column is technically knockout percentage, but what it means is finish percentage, submissions, knockouts, TKOs. Pretty decent numbers for both of these guys. Gordon 34%, Fishgold we see 43% as the underdog. Higher KO percentage despite being an underdog. So really, really exciting fight to target. Still a little too early to tell, but close to 100% exposure in your lineups. Whether you have Gordon or Fishgold, not both, but one or the other, you should probably have one of them in all of your lineups that you create, especially on DraftKings. FanDuel, a little less rewarding for advances and passes, unlike DraftKings. But again, the finish percentage is still nice to see for both of these fighters. And just for some context, Amanda Ribas, who was number 1 in the model on Saturday's slate, her OF index was 137. Gordon is a minus 150 favorite. Remember, Ribas was minus 800, minus 1,000. She was also 137 in OF index. This slate, we have 2 fighters above that number. Insane slate. All right, so let's talk about some of these KO upside fighters. Potential first-round knockouts, potential high DraftKings scores, potential high FanDuel scores, potential FanDuel MVPs. So the first one that stands out, obviously, is Chimaev, who is making his UFC debut. He's a minus 345 favorite. The line has moved 80 cents in his favor. He has a massive 74% finish chance. Insanity for a 3-round fight. And we should be fortunate because if this guy had fought in the UFC, and people who game log watch and click on a fighter's name and look at his game log, let's go over the DraftKings really quickly, and we try to bring up Chimaev, we see there's no fights. Obviously, he hasn't fought in the UFC before. He is a DK point scoring machine. If he had fights, we would see 100 plus point performances littered throughout his game logs. Fortunately, we don't have that, and maybe that keeps the ownership down. Even just a couple percentage points would be helpful. Let's go back to the model. Yeah, Chimaev has 6 professional fights. 4 of them have ended in the first round, and he's won all 6 by knockout or submission. 3 by knockout, 3 by submission. Takedowns, heavy significant strikes. Dude's a DK point machine. Like I said, very good reason for him to be number 1 in the model, especially at his price tag, $8,918. not prohibitive whatsoever. All right, the next one in the model is Jack Shore. Takedown plus advance plus submission city right here. The guy had 11 advances in his first DK fight. Look at his pre-UFC fights, very similar. May not be able to expect 11 advances again, but when he gets a fighter on the ground, he's looking to get on his back, and he's looking to choke him out, point blank. Yeah, I don't think it's an anomaly, his first DK performance. And now we see him as a minus 715 favorite. 125-cent move in his favor. 73% submission chance, essentially. I guess he could randomly knock out Aaron Phillips, but this is mostly submission for him. But again, high first-round submission chance. And if he doesn't get him out in the first round, he has a high chance of getting him out in the second or third round by takedowns, which we know is great for fantasy scoring. So Jack Shore checks in at number 2. His price a little more expensive at $9,420, respectively. The other fight, which is super interesting to me, that when you look at their records, they rank a little bit lower than you would imagine, but it is Abdul Razak Al-Hassan, let me get the name right, and Munir Lazez. Now, Abdul Razak here is just insane numbers. He's 10-1 professionally, and all of 10 of his wins have come by first-round knockout. Insanity. Lazaz, meanwhile, he's 8-1 or 9-1. 8 of his 9 fights have come by knockout. So expect the knockout here. I mean, we look at the percentages, the knockout to finish percent: 24% for Munir, 75% for Abdul Razak. I mean, the betting markets are basically saying 99% chance this fight ends early. So the thing is, both these guys are a little bit lower volume. So if they don't get the first round knockout, they may not end up in the optimal lineup, at least especially for Abdul Razak Al-Hassan, who at $9,218 needs that first round KO. Now, granted, he's done it every single time he's come out, but he's coming off a layoff, has had some off the cage issues. I don't know how you say that in UFC, but definitely some off the field issues, and he's been dealing with a lot. So he checked in overweight at the weigh-in. So again, for someone who's going to be very popular, potential fade candidate in Al-Hassan, who, when you look at his record, look at his fight logs, looks like a no-brainer play. But the downside gets quick if this somehow makes it out of the first round. And again, with so many other high upside fighters on the slate who could eclipse Al-Hassan's totals, even in a first round KO for him, I probably will have less than the field will have. If you're making, let's say you're making 5 lineups, the field is projected to be 40 to 50%. I would have him in 0 or 1 lineup and hope that he doesn't get a late first round KO and break the slate. That looks like the best move so far. And Lazez, even meanwhile, at 20% and 11% projected ownership, which will continue to update until the slate starts based on a variety of factors, looks like a good leverage spot. 24% KO potential, and probably could be higher based on his history. Double leverage there if you play him instead of Al-Hassan. All right, one more fighter to talk about is Bukauskas, Modestas Bukauskas, who is also making his debut. He's very, very expensive, 60% KO chance as we see here. But if you're hashtag watching the film on some of his previous fights, not very impressive. It gets taken down pretty easily. Was actually behind in most of the fights until he just gets up and just wrecks the opponent and gets the KO. But a pretty tough opponent this time around against Mihailidis. Now, Mihailidis, you see here, it actually ranks higher than Bukauskas, despite being a 165 underdog to him. And the betting markets kind of recognize this too, as a 50-cent move has been in Mihailidis' favor. So at 7,200, he looks like one of the best value plays on the slate, especially $11 on FanDuel. If the betting markets, if our model is correct, very rarely do we see an underdog ranked higher than the favorite. And here's one of those rare chances with Mihailidis over Bukauskas. All right, one fight to talk about that we should probably avoid, which generally means that it'll end up in a knockout and we'll all be screwed. But it's the Cody Stamann and Jimmy Rivera fight. Just a combined 41% finish chance for both these fighters. Let's bring up Stamann. Let's look here. Stamann, Rivera, and Low volume here. Both fighters rank in the bottom half of the model, which is a fight we generally want to avoid. If you're playing tons of lineups, yeah, sure, you get some exposure for the outlier cases. But for most of you making just a handful of lineups, just making one lineup, this is a fight you can clearly avoid based on the volume and low knockout chance potential. Now, before we get out of here, just one final piece of advice. Embrace the uncertainty on this slate. Leave money left over. There's a lot of options here for chaos. So just like on Saturday's slate, especially with only 11 fights now, we get more ties at the top of the leaderboards if chalk hits, if people use most of their salary. So once again, on DraftKings, I challenge you to use $49,000 or less of your salary. Get some high upside underdogs in there. Don't use all the expensive fighters. Look for those knockout chances and embrace uncertainty. Just because they haven't fought in the UFC and what their pre-UFC tape tells us could be a completely different story once they step in the ring on Wednesday. So wide range of outcomes. That should be music to anybody's ears who plays high-risk contests. For FanDuel, remember, salary is not an issue. The only thing you have to do is get a little unique with your MVP spot. And as we look here, FanDuel MVP percentage, our projected ownership, no surprise, we always see this. The title fight favorite, Calvin Kattar, going to be 20+% in the MVP spot. But again, with all the high knockout potentials on the slate, you can easily go with someone like Jack Shore, even Gordon or Fishgold. Let's sort by KO percentage here, actually. Chimaev is our favorite at FanDuel MVP. Projected 7-10 ownership probably. But again, nearing a 50% knockout chance in round one, which is massive for FanDuel. Al Hassan, I imagine his FanDuel ownership will creep up a bit with his first round KO potential and his history. But again, all these guys provide leverage over Calvin Kattar, who's going to be the #1 highest owned MVP. You play any of these guys over Kattar, you can fit 3 other high owned flex fighters in your lineup and be totally fine and be unique and have high upside. All right, that'll do it for this video. Appreciate you listening. Again, the PGF video is coming out soon. Another MMA video before Saturday is coming out. Be sure to click subscribe, wherever the subscribe button is on your screen. That way you get access to all of our latest videos as soon as they're released. You're not constantly refreshing. As soon as our videos come out, you say, oh shit, Occupy released a video. Let's check it out. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video. That helps us out. We appreciate it. And let us know who you think will be the highest scoring DraftKings player in the comments below. Any questions you have about the slate, about MMA DFS in general, go ahead and comment below. And we'll be sure to get back to you. Go check out last week's video. I came back and answered everyone's questions. So be sure to follow us on Twitter at Occupy Fantasy. You can follow me at Brian Jester FF on Twitter. OccupyFantasy.com is where you can get the MMA Occupy model that you see on screen. And we are going live on Twitch Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It'll be 6 to 7, a dual Twitch stream, live Q&A. First half will be MMA since the slate starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. Second half will be PGA, which starts the following day. So twitch.tv/Occupy Fantasy. That link is in the description below. Go follow us there and come join us for the live Q&A on Wednesday. All right. Appreciate everyone listening. Good luck, and we will talk to you soon.